Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. This is a very big deal, this session. Lots and lots of questions regularly, I would have to say, about whether you can use your plate if you have a joint replacement, or if you have arthritis, or if you just have a bad joint. So whether you have something you're waiting to be repaired, or you're trying to improve, or you are recovering, could be injury or a surgery situation, your approach to using the plate is still very much an individual thing. I often talk about how to get started on a plate, and how you start on a plate is going to vary, really depending on you physically, where you're at, any deficiencies, other symptoms or comorbidities that you may be dealing with. So we're never dealing with the same body. And I say this very commonly in sessions. We're all individual. The marketing all speaks to, we're all special, we're all unique. But when it comes to a workout or a diet, we're always looking for the one size fits all. So what I want to do today, as I do in all of my sessions with you, I want to ensure that you understand how to use the settings on your plate to modify perhaps some of the exercises that you'd like to be doing or are supposed to be doing if you're dealing with a troublesome joint. So before we get going here, I want to make sure I am coming through on the other end in Facebook land. And if you are joining me, please let me know if you can see and or hear me. Got a little bit of a delay starting here today. And if you're watching this, of course, on a recorded, I'm not seeing myself live here. Hang on. If you're seeing this on a recorded basis later and have related questions that I did not answer in today's session, never hesitate to reach out. Always tag me at Debbie with a Y is the best way to get to me. I have my stool over there today, so I'm feeling too tall for my camera. But I would like to get started. If you are joining me, I'm assuming that you're dealing with joint issues, or perhaps you're recovering from a joint replacement. What I would like to invite you to do is follow along with the demo portion. If you're joining me today, I'm going to give you some tips. This is not a routine. I want to go over some modifications that you can do with your plate at home as you progress through your recovery or the improvement of the situation you're trying to deal with. So I do have a few of you here. If someone could let me know if they see and hear me, I'm going to keep rambling here. Questions I am going to deter to the end of today's session. If there's anything that I need to show you to do or any modifications, we'll get to that to the end. But I would like questions today, because I know there's going to be lots of different nuances, and there's lots of different people getting hip and knee replacements, but you're all very individual, and I want to talk to the individualities today. So first of all, whether it's an injury, whether it's arthritis, whether you're dealing with a replacement, there's usually some parameters that your therapist or your doctor has given you as far as when you're able to resume activities. Now, resuming your activities to a place and a veracity of where you may have left, sometimes it's not a matter of starting off exactly where you left off. There's this whole period of recovery from the time you have an injury or a joint replacement surgery to the point where you're able to resume and function in your normal things. And that's usually in a physical therapy office, or perhaps you're supposed to be doing some exercises at home. Just a reminder, your vibration plate is simply a tool. It is just an environment that you can use to do a couple of things with exercises, perhaps, or stretches that you're to be doing at home as part of your maintenance or your recovery plans. So a vibration plate is simply an environment that reduces the amount of impact that you would spend perhaps walking, jogging, doing other activities. It reduces the amount of time that you have to spend doing the exercise. And it also makes the moves or the exercises themselves somewhat more possible for you, the person doing this. So if running and jogging and hitting the gym was for everybody, nobody would be looking at vibration plates. So a vibration plate is a kinder activity. So instead of talking more specifically today about, can a vibration machine be used per se post hip surgery, it's more a discussion about what activity are you able to be doing at this point in your recovery or in your getting prepared for surgery. So using your plate can be kind of a double-edged tool. It can help you as a warm-up tool. Perhaps you're getting Oh, I didn't turn it on yet. Perhaps you're getting ready for surgery. Perhaps you're doing activities, but that arthritic knee or hip, holds you back from doing your activities as you normally would. So a plate can be two things. If you're dealing with bad joints, it can be a great way to warm up the joints, the muscles, better prepare the body, for activities after, other therapies. Perhaps you're just going for a big walk with friends and it leaves you paying for it after you've gone for the walk. So for the purposes of today's demo, I want everybody starting in a seated position. I'd like you sitting on something that gets your legs at a good 90-degree angle. I'd prefer you not going downhill. The reason I want you starting seated is I'm going to make a blanket assumption today that many of you are not in a position yet to be bearing weight, or maybe not for long periods. And by sitting on a stool and putting your feet on the plate, you're reducing the amount of body weight that you're putting into the transaction. So a lot of times when people ask me the simple question, well, can I use a vibration plate after I've had knee or hip surgery? It really depends on how recent that surgery was and how close you are to being able to resume your day-to-day activities. So if you're not able to bear weight, you're still in a place of recovery, there are ways that you can use your plate, but in a modified way. And I'm going to show you two simple modifications today. The first one is weight bearing, or partially weight bearing in a seated position. So for those of you that have not watched any of my ramblings on seated use, there's a million ways that you can use your machine in a seated position, but it reduces the amount of body weight. So for example, if a doctor says, oh no, you shouldn't use your vibration plate, you just had a hip replacement. I agree. If you want to do something like this, you shouldn't maybe be standing and working that joint a day or two after your surgery, but I can guarantee you're going to be doing a lot of sitting. You're going to have a lot of lymph and circulation that you'd like to get moving. And by sitting on a stool, the hip's not even part of the equation. But there are other body parts that could use some attention. And there's ways that you can use the machine to boost your recovery. Get that lymph going, get that circulation going, where you're perhaps unable to do that through activity. So seated is one really good way to start. There's a million variations you can do seated. You can do little leg lifts, calf raises. You can get into upper body. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that today. I will link, as I'm beginning to do in all my sessions, a spreadsheet of all the sessions I've ever done. So if this is you and you're going to be spending a fair amount of time seated in your recovery or getting ready for surgery, there's lots of things that you can do seated without affecting certain areas of your body. Another way, and this one I really like to drive home, and I don't spend enough time doing these types of sessions, is kind of splitting the body weight in half. So let's say that you've had a knee or a hip replacement on the right side of your body. The left side of your body that hasn't had the surgery or the injury is doing all the work. It's doing the extra work. It's bearing more weight. You're having to rely on it more, and it needs a little bit of attention. So I always say you've got a good side and a weak side. When you're in a recovery or surgery situation, you've got a side that you potentially could put on the vibration plate, but you're probably afraid to because you think, well, I just had that hip or that knee replacement. So if you're able to stand on the floor and you find yourself, doing things like this because you're not supposed to be bearing weight on this side, just doing this is a bazillion times more impact than using your plate. So a couple things you can do. So the side that needs attention, you could lift one leg if the balance is good. Give this leg some recovery. If it needs some strength, do the things that you need to give it strength. But you could expose the strong side of your body. One way that we can do that, for those of you that do not have, this is the AeroFlex Step. It is an aerobic step tool. I like to use it to give me more stationary surface that's the same height as the machine. So I'm going to demonstrate going this way instead. So this is my good side in this time, and this is my bad side. So the good side goes on the plate. The side that you're not supposed to be doing a lot of activity on yet is not on the plate. So you're kind of, I'm going to see if I can give you a better angle here. Okay. So the side that's doing the work, or perhaps there's one side that you're trying to, maintain strength and keep your exercises going. because it is doing the work or it's doing the compensating, you can still do some exercises, but you've only got one side of the body being challenged by the plate. The other side is on dry land. A variation of that could be if you do not have a step and you're starting to bear weight, but you're not really comfortable or ready, or your doctor advises, give the surgery side or the injury side a little bit more time. You could you keep that leg on the ground and put the other leg on the machine. And if the balance is good, just take the weight out of the surgery or the injury side. You're going to get a little bit more total body effect. You don't need to stand terribly wide. As far as settings, if you haven't watched any of my sessions, it's always starting with a mid to high speed range and less amplitude. In a bad joint situation, if you're dealing with arthritic knees, bone on bone, hip replacement, all these things, a lot of times you're ready to get exercising, but you've been stagnant for so long, your level of conditioning has declined dramatically. So consider yourself a new user. And I always recommend, I deal with so many chronic issues. There's no right or wrong. It's not a setting. It's not a program. It's understanding how to modify for your individual needs. And I always recommend feet closer, less intensity, wide is more. So when you're in a post-surgery or an arthritic situation where you've just got troublesome joints, you don't want to increase the amount of impact. You want to reduce it. So bring the feet closer and bring the speed up. A mid to high speed in oscillating. Oscillating is the primary, it's the main movement of these machines. There are other movements, but all of Life Pro's models offer oscillating. It is the most functional and it is the most preferred. So all my sessions are in oscillating. And there's a few more adjustments. That's why I tend to always hammer this amplitude point. Everybody wants to know frequency. What frequency is best for this or what programs for that. But nobody's talking about the amount of impact or the lack of impact. So closer is less, wider is more. And it's very common, you see at the trade shows, you even see in the book, no offense to the manuals, people will stand wide and go really slow. But it's very choppy. It's not good on troublesome knees and joints. And then you go the full 10 minutes. Because it's only 10 minutes. What's 10 minutes? Well, you're on a machine that accelerates the effects of what you would do on the floor. So if you're dealing with arthritic knees, pain, post-surgery, pre-surgery, anything that impact would affect, it's just going to happen sooner on the machine. So reduce. Be conservative with your time. Be conservative with your foot or your hand position. And just start feeling the difference between wide. And wide does not mean more benefit. It means more movement. And how much you're ready to sustain really depends on you personally, as well as the position that you're doing. So if you're just looking at recovery and feel good stuff, you're beginning to bear weight, be functional. Keep those feet hip width apart or less. Knees are always slightly bent. The taller you stand, the more you're going to feel it in the head. If you bend the knees a little more, we absorb. If the knees or the hips are the problem and it's hard to bend deep, it's the one thing that you should focus on. It's not about going longer and longer. It's about improving your range. Eventually, the better your range becomes, the more your mobility and everything else improves. That leg strength, getting up out of the chair, the day-to-day, the independence, all that stuff we want to maintain will not come from just going longer and longer and longer and longer. You need to start pushing yourself. And a lot of times, if you are in a pre or a post-surgery situation, you probably have a list of exercises that you are supposed to be doing and perhaps a few that you're supposed to not be doing. The plate, again, I cannot stress, is just an environment that makes those exercises easy. So one, I know when I was doing my therapy for my knee, there was this lunge that I would have to do, and I would turn my foot to the right, to the center, to the left, to the center. Well, it's way funner and way faster on your plate. So I put one foot on, my back knee is bent slightly, and I'm going to go right, left, inside. So any of these exercises that you may be doing on the floor or on a massage table, a lot of ways you can modify them and use your machine. Settings, go with a closer foot position and a mid to high speed and less time. So 2 ways to use your machine, whether it's getting ready for the surgery or you're recovering from the surgery or the injury. use it more often in shorter sessions to manage symptoms, the lack of energy, the lack of lymph flow, the fact that you're unable to exercise for long durations. You can break your use up throughout the course of your day if you have access to your machine. I by far prefer everybody, whether you're dealing with a chronic issue or not, to go more often in shorter periods. But if your schedule only allows, and maybe you're away during the day, a little bit of time in the morning for the prevention to give you the energy, and a little after the day has presented itself. It's not always about doing that big 10-15 minute workout. And if you are dealing with symptoms like pain, intermittent swelling, neuropathy, there's all kinds of things that can happen after a joint replacement or while you're waiting to get it replaced. Some of you are on a tremendously long waiting list. There's many things that you can do to manage those symptoms, and all the while, while you're simply using it to manage symptoms, you're keeping the bones stronger, you're keeping the muscles stronger, you're gaining balance and stability, you're improving your blood and your lymph. So don't beat yourself up if you're unable or have no desire to do a whole big workout program. I want you guys to be successful in using your plate, especially with bad joints. There's so much bad press out there about vibration machines being harmful. A lot of that is coming from poor terminology. And there's similar terminology in occupational vibration exposure, which is dump trucks and campers. And it's a completely different thing than vibration machines. A vibration machine is not part of the reason people and surgeons and doctors and therapy offices use these machines is because it presents less impact and more effect in less time. So if the issue is you can't do exercise because the impact is painful on your knee, this is a logical tool to be using as part of your getting ready or recovering from whatever you've been dealing with. If there are exercises that you're supposed to not be doing, this would be more specific. I know when we think joint replacements, very commonly we jump into the hip or the knee thoughts, but there's a lot of people dealing with spinal implants, all kinds of implants in the body. Could be a pacemaker. It could be, implants and joints kind of fall into the same category for me. And it really boils down to not a whether you can use the vibration plate or not. It's a matter of whether you're in a position to progress with activity and to what degree. So a vibration plate can be a viable tool once you understand how to make the modifications for your needs and, progress. If you've been doing the same thing for, a couple of weeks, but you find you're improving, change up what you're doing on your plate, even if it's just the settings. A lot of times we're very much creatures of habit. And if you're able to use your machine multiple times throughout the day, I think part of the reason I see such fantastic complement with bad joints and using vibration plates is once you understand how to use it for symptom management, it's not like you got to get in the car and go to the chiropractor or the massage therapist to get the relief. You just have to go as far as your living room. So you have more access when you have a machine at home. It's just often we think of it just as an exercise thing. And it can be so much more once you sort of understand how to make those modifications. And if you're not using a plate regularly, or you haven't been using one before you go in for a joint replacement or surgery, your headspace is in a different place. So if you've been using your plate for a long time and you've experimented with it and you know how it feels and you've kind of gone through the newbie stuff, mentally you almost kind of crave it after you've been away from it. You start feeling sluggish. You know the positive way it makes you feel. Whereas if you're just looking at using a vibration plate for the first time in a post joint replacement or joint repair situation, you don't have the confidence. You don't have that firsthand experience of how it feels prior. So how your approach, I'm not saying you couldn't use the plate, but there are advantages if you've got some experience. So if you're not using your plate now because you're afraid and you've been waiting forever to get the knees or the hip replaced, there's absolutely no reason that you can't use the plate in a comfortable fashion for yourself to help you get ready for the surgery and manage the symptoms I know that you're already dealing with. Double-edged sword for me is it's going to give you the confidence when you're done that surgery situation to know how to progress and know when you feel ready to use it in whatever fashion you choose. Now, I'm a bit of a a more experienced person using the plates post-surgery. And I think of other things like scar tissue and neuropathy and all these things that tend to develop post-surgery. So the sooner you can tolerate using your plate, for me, the better. But it's a matter of how and what modifications. And sitting in a stool and exposing the lower extremities is a really easy way to do it. If you've had a knee or a foot surgery, you might need to get a little bit more creative. But the parts that haven't had the surgery, there's always ways that you can be creative and think outside the box and give them the attention that they need while assisting and contributing to a better total body recovery. So it's never a yes or no. Typically, if I was pushed in a forum and I had to answer certain questions, how soon after joint replacement surgery or repair can I use a vibration plate? The typical answer, if you're looking at returning to your activities, so you want to go riding your bike and jogging again, those light impact activities, is typically 3 months. But if you're asking me, how can I use my vibration plate, or what can I do prior to that 3 months, there's lots of things that you can do from a therapeutic and a recovery situation. Put the workout aside. There'll be in a time appropriate down the road for that. So I have a few of you here today. I'm normally here Mondays, so I'm wondering if I lost a few of you being a day late. It was a long weekend up here in Canada on the weekend, so I was off yesterday for Victoria Day, for those of you in Canada that know that holiday. I will see you again next week. I will be later on Monday again next week. Really looking forward to ideas. If there's things I've done. It was amazing when I did my spreadsheet. I was well over 120 odd different sessions, but just because I think I've covered it all doesn't mean that I have. So if there's anything that you guys ever want myself, Amber, or Roseanne to specifically do sessions on, please never hesitate to reach out. If you do have something specific to today's session, you were unable to join us for the live today, there's some common questions that I covered. Thank you for those of you that brought those to my attention before the live. But if there's any I haven't covered, please let me know. Always tag me at Debbie with a Y. Sometimes the convo gets going and things sometimes get lost in translation. So I don't want to miss a comment if you've made it. Again, just a quick reminder, it's not about whether you can use your plate or not. It's much more about where you're personally at in your recovery. This is just a tool. So feel free to reach out, and I will post a link to the Google document that shows all of my sessions if you do have something specific that you're looking at recovering from as far as joint replacements. But there's always a workaround. Always stay curious and experiment. I'm here to fill in the blanks and do some of the translations for you guys. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Don't work too hard, and enjoy the rest of your week. I hope it's a good one.